Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some pathofexile 1 discussion. We are currently halfway through day 3 of Path of Exile's 3.29 Curse of the Allflame expansion, and it's been a really interesting 2.5 days because I have had probably more direct Divine Orb drops than I've ever had by this point in a league, judging by how far progressed I am, not necessarily how many hours I've played. And then I turn around on Reddit and see everyone's complaining, hey, I'm getting no loot at all. And I think I've solved what exactly was going on here. I've talked to a few people who have done the league mechanic in early maps, and all of them agree this league mechanic feels really, really lucrative. Then I've talked to people who ignored it in early maps and just started doing it in red maps, and their attitude is, it's terrible. And what I think it is that red map rewards feel really bad at the moment. And once you are in red maps yourself, all of the voyages that you're able to run are probably going to be red map equivalent, because of the formula they use to balance things out. For instance, I took a whole bunch of differing level voyage pieces, including some that were from level 40 zones, put them together and wound up in a level 82 voyage. That level 82 voyage was by far the least loot that I've got out of any of the voyages that I've done, excluding the first voyage that you've got to do just as a quest item. So, loot in this mechanic is good in white maps, it is great in yellow maps, and then it seems like it's terrible once you're in red maps. I'm not sure if there are jackpots that we're not seeing currently, or if it's just that it's in a terrible state overall. So Grinding Gear Games are making some changes to it, and I want to quickly go through what you can expect here. And this is Editing GOG. While I was putting together the pieces of this, the patch actually came out. So patch 329.0b has most of what we're going to discuss in this video. Not quite everything, but the most important things are in this. And so that's something that's good. It's already live as we're speaking. So firstly, Strongbox buffs. Now, the current status quo is that your Strongboxes, they are not available, at least the good ones, the Diviners, Arcanists, and Operative Strongboxes, the ones you probably care about. They're not available by default. You need to find a chart that has an implicit that says adjacent areas contain an operative strongbox or something along those lines. Now, these strongboxes are the ones that you do want to see. The other ones tend to be pretty meh, but these are just going to appear by default on the sea floor, even without having one of those charts. Don't know if those charts will still exist or not, but expect that you will just start finding these while you're exploring in voyages. And like, Diviner's Strongboxes are very RNG heavy. Arcanist and Operative Strongboxes, you know that when you open one, you're probably going to get about 5 chaos worth of stuff out of it. Plus you've got a chance of getting a jackpot beyond that. One thing that's very annoying with the current league mechanic is that you can't use alchemy orbs that you pick up off the ground, because you've got to actually bring those with you, which is really frustrating. I don't know if there's a good solution for this, quality of life wise, but currently just make sure that you keep a stack of alchemy orbs with you. I don't think you really need to go as far as carrying scours and exalts. At least I'm not thinking that's worthwhile. If you think it's worthwhile, go ahead and do it. But for now, I haven't been doing that. Next up, Allflame Lantern Indicators. These are getting fixed. So currently, Allflame Lantern Indicators scream at you when there is something valuable nearby. However, they also are like a broken smoke detector. They scream at you a lot, even when you would rather they don't scream at you. And the problem here is that Soothing Coral, which is a little doodad that replenishes your life, flask charges, or your resources, so life, energy, shield, mana, and also all your flask charges. It's a one-use thing. It's just intended as like a tiny little reward that you find. These things are triggering the Allflame Lanterns to scream at you, hey, there's something valuable nearby. Additionally, crab nests, which are definitely not a reward. These things are annoying. These are some of the nastier monsters that are found in the deeps. Those are also triggering the Allflame Lantern Indicators. So this is actually a huge quality of life buff. It means that those Allflame Lantern Indicators are now no longer going to give you false alarms that really annoy you. That means they'll actually be worth trusting rather than being something that you sort of follow but you don't have high expectations of. If they're pointing to something, there's going to be something there that you might be interested in. You might end up getting something like a Diviner's Strongbox that has nothing good in it, but at least there's a chance of something. Crab nests are getting made far less common. Again, crab nests, these are the bogey prize. So this is good in two ways. You get less crab nests, you get more of everything else. Next, currency, scarab, stack deck, and map chests will be made much more common as scattered objects in charts and voyages, and this is more than just the changes that come about from the loot pool being decluttered by crab nests being made rarer. So this would be the equivalent, if you're thinking of crafting boots for yourself, this would be the equivalent of grinding gear games saying, okay, you really want your movement speed on them, we're going to remove one of the competing prefixes, that's the crab nest, and that's going to make it more likely you roll movement speed, but also we're going to make it more common for movement speed to roll on top of that. So that's actually another thing that's really significant. Golden Lanterns are getting a buff. They're now also going to grant increased quantity of items. And so this is something that most of the time you won't really notice. You'll just be like, oh, I feel like I'm getting a little bit more gold and maybe I got 1 or 2 more scarabs than I was expecting. But just getting a percentage boost to quantity is pretty substantial. It really does add up. Dead end and straight line charts are going to be made less common than the other types to make voyages easier to construct. This hasn't been a problem for me. I haven't had any problems getting pieces to fit together, but it's always a nice little bonus. Next, we have 20 to 40% more scattered lootable objects for lanterns to point towards in charts and voyages, depending on the specific charts used. Keep in mind this is going to stack with the crab nest being nerfed in drop rate, so fewer of these are going to be nerfed into crab nests as well. Quantity and rarity values granted by chart modifiers will be raised by 20 to 40%, and there's going to be a new chest which can appear in charts and voyages called Sunken Opulence. This will be coming in our next restart patch as it cannot be deployed as part of a hotfix. Now, Sunken Opulence reminds me of Hidden Opulence, which is found inside the delve mines behind Fractured Walls. I actually haven't delved enough to encounter this since the changes to Exalted Orb drop rates in Mirage. Prior to that, it was guaranteeing you a rare currency. So you would get a Divine Orb, an Exalted Orb, or an Orb of Annulment. Prior to Mirage, the drop rates of those were 5 to 5 to 2. So Orbs of Annulment were the rare one. Exalts and Divines had the same drop rate as each other, and Annuls were substantially rarer. And so every 12 of these hidden opulences that you found, you would get 5 Exalted Orbs, 5 Divine Orbs, and 2 Orbs of Annulment. That was how they worked in the past. I don't know how they work now. But given that they're using the same name, it wouldn't surprise me if the Sunken Opulence chest is something that is reasonably similar. Nowadays, though, it's probably Ancient Orbs, Divine Orbs, and Orbs of Annulment, with the Ancient Orbs being slightly more common than the other two. So I think currently, I'm not sure on this, I think that the drop rates are 3 to 2 to 2 of those three, with Ancient Orbs being more common. And maybe they decide to also add Fracturing Orbs in as a much rarer outcome. But that's speculation. Opulence could also mean something else. It could just be a chest that drops items with extremely high quantity and rarity, or it could be something else entirely. Now, Ducat Crafting will be unlocked much earlier in the meta progression for Curse of the Allflame. This is a huge one. So the Ducats feel like they're something that should be available, at least most of them. There's a couple that feel like they're endgame things, but most of them feel like something that you should be able to use from the start of progression. And it looks like you can. And then you go and try to use one and you're like, oh, you haven't yet upgraded you haven't yet reached the necessary quest state. And that quest state is not made obvious to you at all. You need to complete a chart that is called Kashara's Rest. Now, this is quite rare and quite expensive in Trade League. Then you need to socket that into a voyage. You need to run it again. In that voyage, it will have a boss that you need to fight, and you'll need to loot something from it. And that will be the way that you will then unlock your Ducat Crafting. This is definitely something that you can't do until you're pretty solidly in tier 16 maps. Whilst the boss is not crazy hard, most people I've spoken to that have fought it have indicated that it's kind of similar to the quest version of the Incarnation of Dread in terms of the total level of danger that it poses to you and the number of hit points it's got. It's very doable, but it's also something that you don't want to encounter alongside a lot of nasty map mods. So Kashara's Rest is something people are scouring before they run it. Anyways, this should not be required for doing an attribute swap. That attribute swap Ducat is something that should be much, much, much earlier in progression, and they're going to be changing that. I don't mind the things like Reforge with an Infamous modifier or add on a Pantheon modifier. I don't mind those being things that require you completing the entire quest chain, but some things should be much earlier. We'll be enabling some missing currencies to be used with Allflame Crafting, such as Ancient Orbs and Orbs of Chance. I can't see these being very good choices, to be honest. You're not going to want to waste Dead Man's Sulfur on using Orbs of Chance multiple times, when you could just use a Scouring Orb and then reapply it multiple times. And with the Ancient Orb suggestion, I think that you would just use more Ancient Orbs rather than throwing a whole bunch of Dead Man's Sulfur at the thing. So yeah, I think that this one's going to be a miss. The thing that I have noticed, I've found I have found a weird corner case where this crafting isn't working properly, and I've reported it on the bug forums. It's not something that's exploitable, but that's a really, really obscure one involving fractured fossils and the unique item that allows you to craft it as though it was a rare item. That comes up with a bug when you try and do that. I just had a bit of an experiment I wanted to try with that. But yeah, I don't think that these particular currencies are going to be particularly valuable with the new crafting system. The new crafting system is absolutely incredible for things that don't massively change the item that you're applying it to. That's what you want to use it in conjunction with. We'll be adding the ability to open the voyage board for your currently ongoing voyage, which is fantastic, to see where you are in the voyage and what modifiers are affecting it, so you can then prioritize movement through it correctly. This is just a really simple quality of life improvement. They already have this in Incursion, and it's something that's needed there. We've seen requests for charts to be launched directly from the bathysphere, absolutely, rather than requiring players to speak to Valerie every time. We'll be adjusting this so that you can do it. Yeah, this is just a simple quality of life thing. Honestly, should have been there on day one. After this, there's some discussion about Allflame Lantern placement issues. The main issue I have had is if you use a teleport move skill aggressively to jump out into the water, into the deep water, and you are on automatic placement, then you get yourself in serious trouble doing that. That's something I would like to see fixed, but that has to be like a distant frost blink. It's not something that's really short. Otherwise, yeah, you can waste an Allflame Lantern if you're on automatic by just going into a corner. That's where there's not very much that you can unveil. But that, I feel, is something that's just, it feels like a mistake when you do it. It doesn't feel like the game has done a gotcha on you, because your minimap is also telling you probably don't do that. Other improvements are ongoing. We'll get as much into this patch as possible while releasing it as quickly as possible, so there may be more than listed here. After this, Abyss. So I know someone, Cyclone, who was doing some serious testing of Abyss, and he was not able to get it working well. He was someone who pushed really, really aggressively into endgame, and then got to the point that was, doing some of the toughest farms he could think of with Abyss, and was not able to find any combination that was even mediocre in terms of the rewards from Abyss. So based on that, I think it's probably quite sensible that they're going to be doing a few increases over time to the loot that comes out of Abyss. Abyss as a mechanic is definitely in a really fun state right now, but I do think that it's right that there doesn't seem to be much in the way of drops coming from it. There is a degree that this can be self-balancing though, because if the mechanic was actually terrible, then suddenly your Stygian Vices become worth a lot more, and that can actually make it worth doing again. But I think it does need to have a fair number of core drop pool items added to it as well. So yeah, they're aware of this, and they're going to be working on it. Next up, there's a section on Luminary and Mercenaries of Trathus. So Luminary is feeling underpowered to a lot of players, and the thing is that this is particularly visible when you're breaking into yellow and red maps. So you've got a mercenary that you've outleveled for a bit, but you can't find anything better than it because you keep getting things that are higher level, but they're just not suited to what you're trying to do. And that's something that's a bit difficult that's coming up. So Grinding Gear Games are making a couple of changes here. Firstly, because you are unable to get the mercenary that you want early in the campaign, there is a penalty that permanent mercenaries get compared to temporary mercenaries. This is going to appear quite a bit later than it did before, and it's going to be less intense. It's still going to be the same at level 83, but the progression through the axe, and particularly through middle maps, should be a bit smoother than it was before. Next, buffs are coming to attack damage dealing hired mercs, so they're more effective in the endgame. But probably most importantly, infamous mercenaries are becoming more common. Now, infamous mercenaries are the ones you probably care about if you are playing as a luminary. They're the ones that you want to have. You might settle for a while for a non-infamous, but eventually you're going to want to upgrade to an infamous. They just have better stats. So this will also mean that mercenaries will feel more rewarding for everyone because infamous mercenaries have better loot. Now, mercenary skills more frequently have a larger number of support gems when you encounter them in maps. Warning, this is going to make them much more dangerous when you're fighting them, and they're already extremely, extremely rippy. And to aid you in obtaining a stronger mercenary, I really like this change. This is something that's designed so that your level 60 mercenary can hold their own a little bit more against the level 75 one that you might find that would be an upgrade. When you have a weaker mercenary, there is a new notable coming to the Atlas passive tree that will cause all allied mercs to deal more damage to other mercenaries and rogue exiles. So it's not going to be something that's going to make your current out-leveled merc be more effective against pinnacle bosses or anything like that, but it will make them substantially better against trash monsters. But probably most importantly, they're reviewing how mercenary deaths interact with mapping, because having your merc die bricks your map at the moment, and players just can't re-enter to revive them. One of the suggestions I've seen bouncing around online is that you can spend a map portal in order to revive them. And I think that's a reasonably sensible one. It means that it actually does matter. You do not want your mercenary going splat, but it's not really any different to if you had another player who goes splat. And then you've got to have them exit and come back in, and that wastes one of your portals that you could have otherwise used. Anyways, we'll see exactly how that works out. I think that's the best idea I've seen anyone suggest. Other than this, there's a whole bunch of bugs that they're looking at here. One thing that's particularly obnoxious is the caster mastery that unlocks chests. This one is opening league mechanic chests without granting the intended buffs, which is really annoying because those buffs are pretty substantial, and because you have to fight at the time that you open those chests, you probably do actually end up casting a spell near them, even if you're trying not to. So that one's really frustrating. Allflame guidance arrows, these are the lantern ones, continuing to point towards chests that have been opened automatically. This one's another frustrating one. A number of other little things that are there. Interestingly, mana fused staff not interacting correctly with ignite. I'm not aware of this because I haven't yet swapped over to a staff. I've currently got quite load-bearing resistances on my shield, which is something I want to get rid of quickly. And I'm probably only one upgrade away from doing so, but then at that point I want to change to staves, because 200 cost of staves have been made incredibly better in 329. But that's not something I can do at the moment, so I haven't yet been able to play around with mana infused staff. When I do though, if it's not working properly with ignite, that's actually quite bad for me. And mercenary minimap icons not being removed is something that's a little bit annoying, and legions have also been breaking quite a bit and giving less loot than intended, which is something that Grinding Gear Games are also working on as well. So anyways, there's a lot of things that they're working on, but I think the most interesting thing is that, having looked at all the different things I can find about people's reactions to the league mechanic, the fact that I was getting good results from it, other people were getting derisory results, I think it really is that the day one version of the league mechanic that came out was very lucrative in white and yellow maps, but a lot of people just powered straight through to endgame, and as a result, were getting really, really terrible drops when they went into the league mechanic, because I do not think it is dropping much loot in red maps. It is dropping a lot in white and yellow maps, but once you bypass those, it's kind of hard to go and actually farm up any number of charts in them, because you probably want to be farming red maps for the other loot those red maps have, and that ends up putting you in a bit of a bind. I'm going to leave it there though. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and see you back in 329.